We continue to talk about the idea of measuring the health of the economy. We discussed the idea of the statistics that could be used to do that, and now we are going to shift to the idea of some different philosophies or ideologies that can be used in terms of how to maintain the health of the economy. This is where we need to remind ourselves that economics is not always black and white, that there are opinions, there are ideologies, there are differences of opinion. And we're going to bring up a couple of those major differences of opinion, those schools of thought here today. So, just like with so many other things that we would talk about, opinions can differ on what sort of an approach to take. So even if we all agree on the goals that we want unemployment to be low, we want inflation to be low, we want the economic growth to be high, the route that we pursue to achieve those goals, there is a great deal of difference of opinion on what we should do. Let's start with the school of thought that is known as the classical view. The classical view is associated with an economist named Adam Smith. Some of you will already be familiar with him. He wrote the famous work that has become known as Wealth of Nations. And in the Wealth of Nations, he describes his theory about what would lead to a successful economy or a wealthy nation. And you've probably heard this phrase before, and I don't particularly care how you pronounce it, laissez-faire or laissez-faire. I hear both in the economics world, so either one would be fine. So we'll say laissez-faire for right now. Laissez-faire is the idea from Adam Smith that the government should keep their hands off of the economy. They should stay out of it. Now, he is not an anarchist, so he's not really saying that there should be no government at all, but he is advocating the idea of a very, very small role for the government in the economy, very much a hands-off approach by the government. He has another theory known as the invisible hand. Think of the invisible hand as being an unseen force that can manipulate the movement, the transactions within the economy. And the idea of it being invisible or unseen means that it is not particularly burdensome or onerous upon us. He is contrasting what he is about to describe, or I am about to describe, the invisible hand theory, with the visible hand of government. Government to him is very much in your face and visible, and he does not like that idea. He instead likes the invisible hand. And the invisible hand is literally the interaction between the businesses and the consumers. And it's this idea. Maybe I am an entrepreneur and I notice that there is the need for a product. Maybe it's this. Maybe we live in a rainy climate and I see that people would benefit from umbrellas. So I start a business and I produce umbrellas. And Adam Smith would look at this and he would say, this makes a lot of sense. This entrepreneur noticed that there was a need and they stepped into the gap to fill that need. Everybody wins. People get the umbrellas that they want, that they desire, and I am able to make money off of it. Remember, it doesn't even just have to be me making money. Maybe it also makes me feel good that I am helping out society. Maybe it is a part of my creative impulse that I designed and produced the actual product of the umbrella and ran the business. So there are some other intrinsic benefits that can come into that. But again, the idea would be that everybody wins. Further, it could go on like this. Somebody else sees me making money selling these umbrellas, and they decide that they can do a better job. And so they come up with a superior umbrella, perhaps even for a lower price. And now we're in competition with one another. And again, the idea would be that the consumer would benefit and the most successful business would benefit. This is the invisible hand, the idea of the market. No government needed, or at least very little government needed in the interactions that we have just described. There is a contrasting view. Now, this one, the pronunciation is a little bit more important. This is pronounced Keynesian. Now, you're going to hear people say Keynesian. That's actually incorrect. And the reason that I know that it's incorrect is because this is named after a man called John Maynard Keynes, and he pronounced his own last name Keynes, so we'll go with that. This is the Keynesian view, and it is a reaction to the classical view. It is a different approach. John Keynes reacted and he basically said this: the classical view of Adam Smith worked pretty well from 1776, when The Wealth of Nations was published, really all the way up until the late 1920s and the early 1930s, with the onset of the Great Depression. And then John Keynes says, actually, it is no longer working. Its day seems to have passed. It is too simple of a formulation for the type of economy that we are looking at now in the 1930s, in the Great Depression. And so he advocates a large role for the government. He is not a complete command economist. He is not even necessarily what some of you would call a socialist, but he is saying that unlike Adam Smith, the government needs to play a prominent role in the economy. He is for things like the government spending money, very much like FDR in the New Deal, the government taxing, the government taking money from a source and spending it in a different way to try to affect what is happening. And he is also for regulating businesses, which we have brought up previously. There are other schools of thought. There are gradations within these schools of thought, but these are some basic vocabulary terms that we want to lay out today: the classical view and the Keynesian view, and use those as we now continue to go forward with our analysis of the very basic fundamentals of economics.